Cinderella waved goodbye to her friends and the odd fairy creature. She held on tight as the silver carriage zoomed towards the king's castle. Once she arrived at the massive stone palace, she was escorted to the banquet hall. Upon entering the large golden-walled and ruby-floored room, Cinderella felt all eyes on her. "Oh my!" and "What a wonder!" and "That mask is so strange!" and "Her extravagance is breathtaking!" were among the comments Cinderella heard as she passed by dukes and duchesses, lords and ladies, all dressed in the finest attire. Suddenly, a handsome man bowed gently in front of her and asked to dance. His blue eyes glimmered behind his ruby-encrusted mask as she curtsied and took his outstretched hand. She danced with him for the entire night. They discussed many things, and the man was surprised at her knowledge about business. "You enchant me. My grandfather desires that I spend my evening looking for the right woman, but I seem to have found her already," the man said. "Your grandfather?" Cinderella asked. "Yes, surely you know him," the man smiled. Just as she was about to respond, Cinderella heard the large golden clock in the center of the banquet hall strike midnight. Dong, dong, dong. As the clock began to count down, Cinderella apologized hurriedly and ran as fast as she could out of the palace. She jumped into the silver carriage, dropping one of her glass slippers. She held on tightly as the carriage zoomed away from the palace. Cinderella had a sleepless night, unable to get the image of the man's blue eyes out of her mind. The next morning she swept the floors with the corn broom, washed the walls with a sponge, pruned the gardens with the cutters, and began preparing breakfast. As she set the dining table, she could hear the wicked ladies complaining. "Terrible ordeal that was," screeched the eldest. "Quite horrid," whined the youngest. "The prince was with that woman all night." "It's because you wore that ugly pink dress." Now, girls, come eat your breakfast. And wipe that stunned look off your face, Cinderella. It doesn't suit you," said the stepmother. Before they could be seated, a loud knock came at the door. The woman rushed to the entrance and squealed at the sight of the royal doorman. Cinderella came behind the ladies slowly. "Presenting the prince of the greatest land of all lands," the doorman shouted. "The woman he seeks to marry wore this glass slipper," he continued. The lady squealed again. "It's a glass slipper," Cinderella called out and moved closer. Her stepmother shoved her away. "Who said that?" asked a familiar voice. "I did," the eldest stepsister cried. Then she tried the slipper on with no success. The slipper would not fit. Then the youngest sister tried the slipper on. Again, no triumph came for her. Cinderella knew she could not call out again. Her stepmother would surely punish her if she did. So she grabbed Zuzu and began to walk up the stairs. "Who is that?" called the familiar voice. Cinderella turned around and caught a glimpse of the handsome blue eyes looking up at her. The man from the ball was the prince. "Ella," she replied softly. "Ella," the prince repeated. He walked carefully into the manor and greeted her with an outstretched hand. He gently slipped the glass slipper on her foot, the perfect match. Without a word, he led her away from her stunned, wicked stepfamily and into the royal carriage. She motioned her tiny friends to follow. The prince looked at all the animals in the carriage and laughed. "You are enchanting," he said, looking into Ella's eyes. The two were married as soon as they could be and had a daughter whom Ella named Lily. Once king and queen, they disallowed anyone to capture exotic animals for captivity in menageries, set out laws that allowed the merchant class to prosper, and lived happily ever after.